Well, we are back for another YouTube/podcast session, and we are going to talk about lessons learned from Learn Serve Lead that was in Nashville in November. I wasn't there. So Lisa and Colleen are going to talk about it, and I will respond. Okay. What'd you guys learn? What'd you guys learn? Teach me.
Well, I went to an interesting session on Saturday morning. It was on equitable competency assessment. And so all the panelists were members of the Coalition for the Physician Accountability, and they presented the recommendations for the comprehensive improvement of GME, UME, GME transition. I had to write that down. But actually, I hadn't really read that document, and it's very informative and had a lot of great suggestions. And so this group talked about 3 challenges. And so one was the development of fair and equitable assessment. The second one was readiness for residency. And the third was trust between UME and GME. So it was really interesting. They gave a little talk, and then we had tabletop discussions. And this was like a really hot topic in the Learn Serve Lead because the room was so full. I mean, they had probably 20 tables with maybe 8 people at a table. Then they had like maybe 50 chairs, and then there were people all around the outside standing. So it was really hard to facilitate tabletop discussions, but it was good. And so I noted some of the things that we had talked about in our group. And one was the overemphasis and reliance on using filters in the residency screening process, and how like not all applications get an in-depth review, and that schools are relying on filters like UMSLE. And so they were talking about how they need to leverage technology. So I'm on Facebook. I go to Amazon and I look for something, and then I'm on Facebook again and there's an advertisement. So why can't we somehow come up with technology that can read through these applications and, maybe find the best fit for our schools? So another one was using assessment for learning and growth versus using assessment for ranking and sorting. So that, I think that they talked about the GME programs need to feedback their resident performance back to the school that they attended, so that they can better adjust their curriculum to help their students. So, and then there was another discussion about the 4th year of medical school turning into a vacation for many students, and how students' skills and knowledge suffer during that period of time, and how a lot of schools have created transition to residency courses for their students. And so there was a lot of discussion, but one of the interesting things at the very end, when people were talking about ways to resolve this, a woman said, "I think that we should just place medical student graduates into a residency lottery." Yeah. And everybody applauded. Yeah. So that I thought was interesting, because I know psychology programs have lotteries, and that's how you get into your psychology program. So it was pretty interesting, and so it was a great session.
I think it's just amazing, because it seems like, I mean, I've been going to Learn Serve Lead for I don't know how many years, and it's the same I mean, even though this is a hot topic, it still is like 4th year being a vacation. I think it's been talked about for like 20 years. Yeah. It's just so interesting. And I love the lottery idea, unless maybe by region, because if you might want to be in a certain region or something like that due to family or whatever. And then because it frankly is all a crapshoot, like it really is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if they graduate from medical school, they should have the skills needed to do and perform well in any residency. So, yeah.
Indeed. Yeah.
I mean, that's why we're scrutinized so much by the LCME. So, I think if it is all doing what it's supposed to do, then yes, everybody should be graduating as like an undifferentiated physician. By the end, they should be able to do whatever they need to do in any program, honestly. And I love that was discussed. I'm sad that I missed that session. I'm sure I was networking or doing something with other people. But I actually am working with a few colleagues, and we put in a proposal to the Northeast GEA regional meeting this spring, and talking about how we within the UME program could actually do a much more thorough job of our program evaluation if we got that data from GME. So we have a residency coordinator on the proposal with us. So hopefully we get accepted, and we can have a workshop to really talk about like, how can we all help each other in getting more meaningful data to show that we are graduating students who are really ready for residency when we really stop kind of seeing them and monitoring them at graduation.
Yep. Yeah, love it. Yep. What else? What else did you learn?
So I went to the session that Ronnie and Barbara spoke at. So it felt very necessary to attend the session with the secretariats. Just like Lisa described, we had some tables. There was no table conversations, but the table seats were full and there was standing room only. It was a panel to talk about really the critical nature of the dean's role, which I think we all know that. They went into some more depth of how schools can get themselves into kind of trouble or those pitfalls of the dean not having a voice at the table that they need to have. And sometimes that is related to them having multiple titles at their school. So sometimes they are not just like chief academic officer, they're also maybe CEO of the hospital, or the chief academic officer of the entire health system. So it pulls them away from their focus really on UME, and that can cause obviously some tension with allocation of resources and ensuring that we have all of those things in place to meet all of the elements, the intent of the elements. So they definitely talked about most of the elements in 5 resources for clinical instruction, of course, having a seat at the table to make sure you're talking with all the health systems you use, all of the leadership at the hospitals. Sufficiency of faculty to teach, of course. Adequacy of financial resources goes without saying. If you're at a school with multiple campuses, what does the dean's authority really look like? Again, they really were talking about this because they also provided some data at the onset of the presentation. The secretariats talked about that spring part 2 survey that we all fill out.
Yep.
And they asked the question about who's your current dean and how long have they been in the position? And then do they have other roles and are they interim? And I think it was something like 40% of deans have turned over in the last 2 years. It was a very high number of change. And a lot more of them are starting to have those dual roles within their institutions. A lot of them really, again, related to the kind of more the clinical health system. So it was nice, to see a couple deans. So some deans who are from larger health systems just talk about the importance of that and how they balance it. And one of the takeaways, and I'll give a shout out to Greg Knoll from UPitt. He put together some really wonderful notes and sent them out on our accreditation preparation and quality improvement listserv, APQI. So many of you listening probably are on there. And if you're not, get on the listserv, contact one of us. We can help you get on it. And he said, one of the pearls was that LCME accreditation really should be treated like Joint Commission. And I think schools are not taking LCME as seriously as they probably should, because we've worked with schools and worked at schools where they had some challenges that may have been resolved if they really took it as seriously as we do when JCO shows up at the hospital.
It's really hard for me to understand why schools do not take it seriously, because schools go on probation. There's tons of schools on warning. And, I admit, like, after we got done, we took a little breather for, a few months, months, not years. And now we are way, way back into it. And I just don't don't understand. And I think I was reflecting on this because with some of the schools that I've, worked with, and I think there's a lot of turnover in schools too, right? So a lot of like curriculum dean turnover or student affair or whatever. And so I think that is a source of a little bit of that because they don't know what happened before, and they're just, and if someone's not leading the charge to stay focused on that, it falls away. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why it's important to have an accreditation person, a person responsible for CQI, because they're the ones who are always keeping it in your face, getting it on agendas, and making sure that LCME is not being lost and not only focused on 2 years before a survey visit. So
yeah, because 2 years before the survey visit is too late. Yeah, way too late. Yeah.
And I think it's also keeping an eye on pieces that do not directly, it is not black and white. Well, nothing's black and white necessarily in the DCI, but it's even not sometimes in the gray zone of the DCI, but it all will feed back into your compliance and meeting the intent of the elements, even if I think on the surface, it doesn't look like the accreditation person should be involved. There is so much that feeds into it. The Venn diagrams are, massive. So it's always good to have somebody just keeping their eye on all of the pieces and parts as they move and change. And as you lose that institutional knowledge, as you pointed out, Jenny, I think that is a critical piece of it too. Someone who also helps with the documentation and keeping track of that. I know I have to continually do that at my own institution. I'm not even great at it because there's so many things going on, but I do know going back, you just have to make sure everything's in the minutes, everything's documented. Other people have access to files because we lose that information when somebody leaves.
Excuse me, can I ask one question? Did they say if the dean's qualifications or the dean's accessibility, is that getting cited now more often? Because I don't think I have ever seen a citation for that, ever.
They did not mention it, but the fact that they focused emphasis on 4.1, which was the sufficiency of faculty, the dean's authority, and then 5s like resources and all of that.
Yeah.
I can speak for myself that I've been at 2 schools that got cited in the 5s, and it was really about adequacy of resources. And then the LCM is linking that with, again, how is the dean really involved in helping to advocate for those resources?
Gotcha. Okay. Makes sense. Okay. All right. Anything else?
Well, we just missed seeing you there. That's for sure.
I missed it too. I think that's one of the other great things about Learn Serve Lead is the networking. And that I think that's almost just as valuable as a lot of the sessions. I know I've met a ton of, and I know you guys have too, met a ton of great people there. And just like when you're walking out of a session or you're stuck at the table with some random people, and then you realize all the things that you have in common, and then you write papers together, or you collaborate on a project together, or you become, great friends and colleagues that you can call on. So that's a huge, huge, wonderful, wonderful part of Learn Serve Lead for sure.
Yeah. Agree.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
All right. Any last words from anybody? Okay. All right. Well, this if you also weren't there, or if you didn't attend those 2 sessions, now you have a little bit of insight into what we thought were some of the big takeaways from Learn Serve Lead as they relate to medical education and LCME. And we will see you next month. Bye-bye, everybody.